Hello everyone, I'm Brazen Eagle, and thank you for joining me here. So, as you can tell by the title of this video, it's not just the United States of America that has to deal with illegal aliens. Europe is a mess when it comes to illegal immigration as well. So, from MSN, hundreds of migrants occupy Paris Pantheon in black vests protest for you guys, 2 days ago, even though it does say 1 day ago here. Hundreds of undocumented migrants, so illegal aliens, surged into the Pantheon in central Paris on Friday, briefly occupying the vaunted memorial complex to demand talks with the Prime Minister on regularizing their status, activists said. So they're demanding things even though they're criminals, alright? Around 700 migrants and their supporters joined the demonstration, with some pushing into the historic complex at around midday on Friday, a member of the Chapelle des Bœufs collective said. Footage posted on Twitter from inside the building's main dome showed hundreds of people waving papers in the air shouting, black vests, and what do we want? Papers. I don't think we negotiate with terrorists. The so-called Black Vests is a Paris-based migrant association that takes its name from the Yellow Vests anti-government protest movement. As they went inside, tourists were evacuated from the Pantheon, which is the final resting place of France's greatest non-military luminaries, including the writers Voltaire, Victor Hugo, and Émile Zola. Outside, hundreds more were gathered under the watchful eyes of a heavy police presence. In a statement, the Black Vest protesters said they wanted papers and housing for everyone, describing themselves as the undocumented, also known as illegal, the voiceless and the faceless of the French Republic. We don't want to negotiate with the Interior Minister and his officials anymore. We want to talk to Prime Minister Edouard Philippe now, they wrote. They stayed there for several hours until they were calmly evacuated through a back entrance mid-afternoon, AFP correspondents said. All the people who gained entry to the Pantheon have been evacuated, Philippe tweeted early evening as a police source said 37 arrests had been made. France is a country based on the rule of law, which means respect for the rules that apply to the right to remain, respect for public monuments, and for the memory they represent, he added. Some leftist lawmakers came to the site to offer moral support to the migrants, but Marine Le Pen, leader of the supposed far-right national rally, tweeted her indignation. It is unacceptable to see protesting illegal aliens occupy with wholesale impunity. This is the center of the Republic, Le Pen said. Expulsion should be the immigrants' future. That is the law, she said. The Pantheon is a symbol of great men. Inside, there are symbols representing the fight against slavery. We are fighting against modern-day slavery, said Laurent, an activist from French rights group Droits Devant. Many people have been living without rights for years. Well, that was their choice. We've been doing this to ask the Prime Minister for an exceptional regularization. So you want special privileges. There's never been such a thing since François Mitterrand took power in 1981. It's about time we had one. The Black Vests are known for staging headline-grabbing protests in support of the undocumented or illegal. In June, they briefly occupied the headquarters of the Paris-based Eloire Group, which works in contract catering and property. And a month earlier, its activists occupied Terminal 2F, at the city's Charles de Gaulle airport against Air France's collaboration and the deportation of undocumented migrants, also known as illegal aliens. So, even France has a problem with illegal aliens. These illegals, which are actually from West Africa, from my research from other news articles. But, like I said, as I was reading the article, these people, most of them from West Africa, are literally demanding special privileges, such as free housing and amnesty. They don't want to go through the process of becoming a normalized French person. Not necessarily a citizen, but just becoming a normalized French person. You don't have to be a person, you don't have to be a citizen of a country to be in that country. But these people, they refuse to become naturalized legally. They just want special privileges. They claim that they are modern-day slaves, even though they actually are criminals who came to France illegally. Crazy. Also, I do want to bring up, I'm not sure how you say her first name. I thought it was Marie, but maybe it's Marine Le Pen, leader of the supposedly far-right national rally. Now, I don't know that much about this group, but coming from an American perspective, I would say that this group is only considered far-right because the Overton window continues to push left. In my personal opinion, the National Rally is actually just slightly more right than what is socially accepted in today's world. They're not Nazis. All right, they're not Nazis, they're not fascists, they're just slightly more right to what is socially accepted in today's world, especially in Europe, because Europe overall is more socialist than the United States overall. Regardless, there are also politicians within the EU that love illegals and even want more. Now, we have another article here. Germany calls for a coalition of the willing to take in migrants, illegal aliens, rescued from the Mediterranean from July 14th, which is actually when I'm making this today. Germany has called for a coalition of the willing to take in migrants rescued while attempting to cross the Mediterranean to Europe. Heiko Maas, the German foreign minister, called for a core of European Union countries to agree to a scheme without waiting for approval from the rest of the bloc. We need a coalition of the willing for a binding quota system. Why? He said in an interview with the German regional newspaper group at the weekend. We must now go ahead with the member states that are ready to accept refugees. From where? The others remain invited to participate. Germany was always prepared to take its share of the migrants, he added. Why? Mr. Maas's comments comes amid growing concern over the issue. At least 682 migrants have drowned attempting to cross the Mediterranean so far this year, according to the International Organization for Migration, and at least 53 were killed in an airstrike on a detention camp in Libya earlier this month. Well, actions have consequences. EU Justice and Interior Ministers are due to hold talks on the issue this week, but they will meet against the backdrop of a diplomatic standoff over Italy's refusal to allow migrant rescue ships to enter its harbors. It sounds like Italy's actually standing up for itself, which we'll go into a little bit later. Mr. Maas's proposals came under fire from Sebastian Kurz, the former Austrian chancellor, who accused him of giving false hope to migrants. We must not send out false signals and must absolutely prevent any more people risking their lives in the dangerous passage across the Mediterranean, Mr. Kurz said. Italy countered with its own proposals to deal with the problem by deterring migrants from attempting the crossing. Enzo Milanesi, the Italian foreign minister, called on Sunday for specially chartered flights to bypass the Mediterranean altogether. Under the Italian proposals, the EU would decide migrants' asylum claims in North Africa and fly those granted refugee status to be flown to Europe. Those who have the right to asylum must be able to travel in dignified conditions, not in the hands of criminals, Mr. Milanesi told Corriere della Sera newspaper. Migrants are not looking for Italian, Greek, or Maltese shores. They are looking for Europe. Therefore, we must find a solution within a European framework. I like the way this guy is speaking. Operation Triton, the EU's rescue mission, ended last year, leaving only ships manned by volunteer organizations to rescue migrants from drowning. But Italy has refused to allow the volunteer ships to land at its ports, even if other EU states agreed to take the migrants on board. Matteo Salvini, the hardline Italian Interior Minister, has rejected a formal request from Germany to open its ports. Interesting. Very interesting. That's very, very interesting. The land that almost took over Europe in the 1940s wants even more illegal aliens. Man, what the change, Germany. Germany, of course, calls these people refugees, but understandably, we translate this easily to the factually correct illegal aliens. It's interesting to see, though, that the failure of the European Union within this article. Basically, Italy has been taking in many of the illegal aliens because most of them are from Africa and the Middle East. We just saw earlier France had a lot of illegal immigrants from West Africa. But Italy also suffers from the same thing because, you know what? It's on the Mediterranean, much like France. Now, places like Germany, Norway, or even the United Kingdom take in less immigrants, less illegal aliens than Italy. But those types of countries, they force other countries, such as Italy and Greece, to accept the illegals anyway. But you know what? Italy is tired of dealing with the mess. Now, I don't think it's said in this article, but in other articles, actually in the next one, it'll tell you how much it costs Italy every single year. It's kind of like in the United States here. It's like the northeastern states of the United States, such as New Hampshire and Massachusetts, telling states like Arizona and Texas to accept more illegal aliens. You are going to take them in, and you are going to spend money on them, while we don't have to. This is confirmed by this next article that was created about a year ago. So, immigration to Italy, a look at the numbers from June 12th, 2018. How many foreigners live in Italy legally? How many arrive by boat? Are the numbers changing? Here's a look at what the figures tell us about immigration to Italy. Italy's refusal to honor or to offer safe harbor to a rescue ship carrying hundreds of migrants has cast a harsh spotlight on the new populist government's hardened stance on immigration. A total of 629 migrants were left stranded at sea after both Italy and Malta refused to take them in, prompting alarm among European leaders. Spain has now offered to allow the ship to dock at Valencia. Italy's new Prime Minister, Giuseppe Conte, has called for obligatory redistribution of asylum seekers around the EU, and his coalition government has pledged to curb both migrant arrivals and speed up expulsions of illegal aliens. Here are some figures about foreign nationals living in Italy, both legal and illegal. So how many foreigners live in Italy legally? About 5 million legally reside in Italy, according to figures from national statistics, including ISTAT, which is the equivalent to around 8.3% of Italy's population of 60.5 million people. The biggest grouping of migrants come from Romania, accounting for just under a quarter of the total figure, or 23%. Another 9% are from Albania, 8% are from Morocco, 5.5% are Chinese, which is kind of odd, and 4.5% are from Ukraine, with many employed in retail, farming, or domestic work. Sounds kind of like Hispanics in the United States. Anyways, how many foreigners live in Italy illegally? So, focus is largely on the 690,000 migrants who have arrived by boat since 2013, most of them from sub-Saharan Africa. While some have papers, others don't, and most are still in the country. Migration Studies Foundation, ISMU, estimates there are some 500,000 people living in Italy illegally, equivalent to just slightly less than 1% of the population, among them failed asylum seekers and those who have outstayed their visas. Alright, so how many people arrive in Italy by boat? Figures from the International Organization for Migration show that around 120,000 immigrants arrived in Italy by sea in 2017, with the government putting the cost of taking them in at 4.2 billion euros. 4.2 billion euros. That's a lot of money. 2/3 of that figure was spent on caring for asylum seekers, while 18% went on sea rescue and 13% on medical assistance. They are literally spending money on people who want to break their laws. In 2013, there were 22,000 people in asylum centers. By January, that number stood at 182,000. Wow, within probably a year. That number has multiplied by 9 almost. Are the numbers falling? New hardline Interior Minister Matteo Salvini, who heads the Nationalist League Party, has said Italy cannot be Europe's refugee camp, vowing to halt the influx of arrivals and expel hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants. And when the government was sworn in last week, Conte pledged to seek an overhaul of the so-called Dublin rules, under which would be asylum seekers must submit applications in the country of arrival, a huge issue for Italy. But any change in the numbers coming from North Africa will depend largely on stabilization efforts in Libya and the sustainability of a controversial deal between Rome and the authorities and militias there, which has slashed arrivals. Following the deal, which was signed last summer, the number of migrants reaching Italian shores in the first 5 months to this year, to June 8th, stood at 13,808, down 84% on the same period a year earlier, Interior Ministry figures show. There was also a 12% increase in expulsions last year, with ministry figures showing the number hit 6,514, up from 5,817 in 2016. So, like I said, Italy, it's tired of having to deal with this, much like most Americans. Now, here again is another article, my second to last article, regarding illegal aliens forcing their way into Italy once again. Enough, we're coming. Stranded rescue ship heads for Italy without permission. So they're doing it illegally from June 26 this year. The Sea-Watch 3 NGO boat carrying migrants rescued in the Mediterranean said on Wednesday it was headed for Lampedusa Island despite the threat of hefty fines from Italy's anti-immigration interior minister. I don't like this how they say anti-immigration. They should really say anti-illegal immigration. Regardless, I've decided to enter the port of Lampedusa. Sea-Watch quoted Captain Carola Racketa as saying, "I know this is risky, but the 42 shipwrecked on board are exhausted. I will bring them to safety." Marine tracking websites confirmed the vessel had entered Italian territorial waters after spending 14 days sailing back and forth off the coast of Italy's southernmost island. So it sounds like they were just wasting time. Enough were coming in, not to provoke, yes you are, but by necessity, responsibility. Sea-Watch tweeted. Well, Italy has no responsibility for them. Salvini has tried to ban the Dutch-flagged vessel from approaching under a closed ports policy, which has seen migrants repeatedly stranded at sea. Well, actions have consequences. We will use every lawful means to stop an outlaw ship, which puts dozens of migrants at risk for a dirty political game, Salvini said on Facebook after Sea-Watch said it was headed for Italy. I will not give permission for anyone to disembark. Salvini said Rome's ambassador to The Hague was taking a formal step with the Netherlands government. See? Italy deserves respect. We expect the Netherlands to take in the immigrants on board, he said. Italian Coast Guard and customs vessels approached the Sea-Watch as it headed for Lampedusa port. The European Court on Human Rights in Strasbourg declined on Tuesday to intervene, but called on Italy to continue to provide all necessary assistance to vulnerable migrants. Sounds like the EU is having conflict. The German NGO Sea-Watch had asked the ECHR to impose interim measures on Italy, saying the court could ask Rome to take urgent steps to resolve the standoff in order to prevent serious and irredeemable violations of human rights. Well, Germany, how about you take them in then? Salvini said on Tuesday the charity vessel could stay there until Christmas and New Year, but would never be allowed in. Of the 53 migrants initially rescued by the Sea-Watch 3 off Libya on June 12th, Italy took in 11 vulnerable people. Salvini earlier this month issued a decree that would bring fines up to 50,000 euros for the captain, owner, and operator of a vessel entering Italian territorial waters without authorization. On Lampedusa, where Salvini's Nationalist League won 45% in May's European elections, a priest has camped in the street to demand those on board, including 3 minors, to be allowed to disembark. Dozens of German cities have said they are ready to welcome them, and the Bishop of Turin, Cesar Noveglia, said on Monday his diocese would be willing to take them in. We can't hold on any longer. It's like we're in a prison because we are deprived of everything. Help us, think of us. One migrant from the Ivory Coast, which is from West Africa, said in a video broadcast by Sea-Watch. Well, you know what? Actions have consequences. It's serious when the captain has no other choice but to honor her sense of responsibility at the cost of personal consequences, said Carlotta Sami, spokeswoman for the UN Refugee UNHCR in Italy. Responsibility for what? Do you have authority over them? No? Then you shouldn't have responsibility for them. The UNHCR asks for the security decree to be revised and for a system of rescue and disembarkment to be created. The criminalization of NGOs must end, she said. Well, sounds like Italy needs to raise an army. But regardless, this ship that took these people in, that wasted literally 2 weeks at sea, the Mediterranean Ocean, was from the Netherlands, which is located west of Germany, and demands that Italy take in these illegal aliens. That's absolute bonkers. Why should Italy take these people in? Why? That makes no sense. Why? Give them to the Netherlands. Oh, the Netherlands doesn't want them either? Then don't tell Italy to take them in. The Prime Minister Salvini said that there would be consequences for this action, including 50,000 euros as a fine. But you know what? Taking in these people that do not deserve to be in your country will have repercussions. People are sick and tired of this crap happening. You know what happens when politicians open their borders when the citizens don't want it? Here's my final article. From WBHM. A German politician's assassination prompts new fears about supposed far-right violence, posted on July 1st of this year. The assassination last month in Germany of a popular pro-migrant or open borders politician has raised alarm about a growing threat of right-wing terrorism. Sure. It was the first political assassination in more than half a century, and it has shaken the country. Walter Lübcke, a 65-year-old member of the CDU, or Christian Democratic Union, and a staunch defender of Chancellor Angela Merkel's open-door refugee policy, was shot in the head late on June 2nd, excuse me, as he sat smoking on his terrace, according to German investigators. The confessed killer is an avowed neo-Nazi with a 20-plus year history of violence against immigrants. But experts on extremism and some mainstream political leaders suggest the far-right, anti-immigrant Alternative for Germany political party shares at least some of the blame. I don't believe in that. In recent German history, right-wing attacks have mostly targeted immigrants. The assassination of a prominent German politician is unprecedented, said Hajo Funk, or Funke, a professor at the Free University of Berlin who studies right-wing extremism. So cold-blooded, so prepared, so decisive, he says. That kind of killing is a new step, and that is what, for me, is right-wing terror. Yet they don't talk anything about Muslim attacks, murders, or rapes. Okay, go figure. German officials were still calling Lübke's assassination a mystery at the time of his funeral on June 13th in the German state of Hesse, where he was a district president of the city of Kassel. Gun homicides are rare in a country with strict gun laws. Excuse me. The break-in the case came on June 15th when a German SWAT team arrested 45-year-old Stefan Ernst based on DNA evidence collected at the crime scene. Ernst's police record includes an attempt to plant a pipe bomb at a hostel for asylum seekers in 1993. Investigators said he had ties to neo-Nazi groups, including Combat 18, which I've never heard of, an extremist group that originated in the UK, spread to other European countries, and has chapters in the US and Canada. I have literally never heard of this group. He was closely associated with the leading figures of Combat 18, says Daniel Kohler, director of the German Institute on Radicalization and De-Radicalization Studies in Stuttgart. He was friends with them on Facebook. Wow. After Ernst was arrested, says Kohler, Combat 18, for the first time ever in Germany, released a propaganda video in support of the suspect. When Ernst confessed to the killing, he told police he acted alone, but when German Interior Minister Horst Seehofer said investigators continued to look for accomplices and a network, 2 more arrests were made last week. The case is a game-changer, an extremely extraordinary incident, says Kohler. Leading politicians in Germany now feel under direct threat of violence from far-right extremists. You know, it's not... This is ridiculous. It's not that extremists didn't want to do it before, but they simply didn't care, says Kohler. Over the weekend, media reports, confirmed by Germany's domestic intelligence agency, surfaced of a neo-Nazi network that ordered body bags and compiled a target list of political leaders. When Lübke's killer confessed, he also spelled out his motives to investigators. He said he was enraged by the comments Lübke made in 2015 in support of refugees in Germany. Lübke's remarks came during a heated town hall meeting to discuss a new shelter for asylum seekers as hundreds of thousands of migrants and refugees began entering the country. Far-right hecklers interrupted the meeting. Lübke challenged them. Excuse me. There is this famous town hall where he was telling people in the audience, if you don't like human rights, you, the citizen of your country, should go, says Mohammed Amjahid, a political reporter for Die Zeit newspaper. He was very tough. If you really want to know what happened, Volker Lübke said, you know what, we're going to accept these people. We're going to open our borders up to these people, whether you like it or not. If you don't like us doing that, then leave the country. He pretty much said that, and that's why he was assassinated. The exchange led to an online hate campaign against Lübke, who received death threats. He was provided police protection until the storm eventually subsided. In February, his 2015 town hall comments surfaced again in a video posted by Erika Steinbach, a former CDU member of parliament who broke with her party and aligned herself with the political ideology of the AfD, Germany's far-right party, now the third largest in parliament. Her post spurred another storm of hate. She herself has never actually threatened Lübke, but she provided the platform for those who did, says Kohler. Kohler connects AfD rhetoric. If you want to know AfD is the same party. It just stands for Alternative for Deutschland, rhetoric to growing extremism. The AfD's warning of an existential threat to German culture has contributed to extremist violence, he says. You know, I'm going to break here and just say there's a reason why this group is growing. It's growing because of all the things that both legal and illegal immigrants are doing to the German citizens. So, I mean, it's not like there isn't a reason for this growing. Studies produced by his institute show a significant link between AfD hate speech directed against refugees and the level of far-right xenophobic crimes in certain areas. Kohler says. A prominent AfD member of parliament was temporarily suspended from Twitter last year after she refers to Muslim men as barbaric and gang-raping hordes. She isn't wrong. Do you go to Sweden? Do you see the things that are happening in Sweden and Germany? Statistically, there are 3 violent far-right attacks every day in Germany, so that is just significant. We have no other form of violent extremism that presents such a threat, Kohler says. I don't believe that. There's no evidence for this at all. Now, I'll get back into that in just a little bit. So, when high-ranking AFD members use language that dehumanizes refugees to create an existential threat, he says, that spurs violence. Far-right extremists act out on that fear and threat. Shame on these politicians. As the Lübcke assassination investigation continued and alarm rose in Germany, senior members of the CDU charged that the AFD was partly to blame for the politician's death. Actually, it's the CDU's fault for that. AFD rhetoric especially demonizes refugees from the Middle East, Funk says. There's an indirect link, he says, being utterly against all Muslims, Muslims in this country, Muslims around the world. Unleashing of resentment is one of the conditions for murder and for violence. It's like as if they completely ignore all the violence and crime that they do in your country. It's astounding. AFD leaders and supporters accuse the CDU of attempting to politicize Lübcke's death. Everyone has to condemn a murder, says Armin Paul Hampel, an AFD member of parliament. Threats, he says, are my daily business. I got threatened, including we will kill you, and things like that. Nobody complained, by the way, in the German media. AFD political leaders have also dismissed fears of an extreme right-wing terrorist network. The one gentleman in prison is saying nothing, so let's wait, says Hampel. The heated political exchanges come as AFD hopes to boost its support in a series of local elections in the fall. AFD members have accused the CDU, the Christian Democratic Union leaders, of using a murder to discredit political competitors, as an AFD parliamentary leader wrote on Twitter. The AFD has been consistent in criticizing what Hampel calls Merkel's illegal open-door policy for refugees and asylum seekers. AFD leaders demand that most, if not all, of the recent arrivals be sent home. Germany's welfare system will collapse, he believes, under the strain of refugees who refuse to integrate. The central message of his party, he says, is, do we really want a melting pot from all nationalities, or do we just want to keep our identity? He insists that message had nothing to do with Lübcke's assassination. Yes, this was a very long article, but very, very important and revealing about what will happen if you just throw your doors to be completely open. Basically, though, this politician, Volker Lübcke, who is right here in this picture right here, absolutely favored and encouraged open borders. He was a member of the CDU, the Christian Democratic Union, the supposed right-wing party within Germany. I guess you could roughly translate them to the Republicans here in the United States, even though the CDU is actually more socialist than the Republicans, for the most part. So, yep, this guy, Walter Lübcke, loved open borders. And this is what will happen to politicians that refuse to listen to the people. This article and others like it say that the politicians are feeling threatened because of their views. Well, if politicians support policies that will literally end your people and your culture, don't be surprised if there is push back. They claim that the AFD, also known as, like I said before, the Alternative for Deutschland, is far right. I would say, much like the National Rally in France, the AFD incorporates a range of right-wing views just outside the accepted political spectrum at the current moment. Of course, with the Overton window continuing to push left. But to say that there are 3 violent far-right attacks every day in Germany, I would say that that's absolute BS. Maybe unless you include all of the immigrants, both legal and illegal, in the country. I would definitely say that's BS. You know why? Because if there was a far-right attack every day, not even 3 far-right attacks every day, you would absolutely hear it in the headlines. You would eventually hear it. It would be so powerful if there was 3 far-right attacks every day that even Americans would hear of the violence that would be happening if that actually took place. I don't hear a single thing from any of the regional or even national papers in Germany. So that guy is lying. So finally, the article ends, though, and most importantly, with a great quote. Do we really want a melting pot from all nationalities, or do we want to keep our identity? That's very, very interesting quote. We all make choices in this world. And, basically, for politicians that literally want to destroy their own country, they make decisions that can cost them dearly. Like I said throughout this entire long video, honestly, actions have consequences. And if you throw open your doors to everyone in the world, don't be surprised when people say, hey, I don't want to lose my identity and culture and people. And they don't even bring up the fact in Germany about the mass rapes, killings, and things like that from the Muslims. There's a reason why AFD is growing. So, anyways, with that in mind, Thank you very much for watching. I just wanted to bring probably more to the American side here, but to the people of the world, that illegal immigration is a huge thing still, but just not as big as in the United States, but a fairly large thing within Europe. So I'm Brazen Eagle, and I hope you have a great day.